Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video where we are going to be talking about and reviewing probably one of the best things I have ever read. Today I'm going to be talking about and reviewing One Piece East Blue Saga Volumes 1 through 3. Now, as you can see in the title of this video, I am reading One Piece for the very first time, but I'm actually not new to One Piece. A couple months ago, I had started watching the anime, and now I'm completely caught up. I'm all the way up to Egghead, which is the most current arc at this point in time that I'm filming this video, and so I'm not new to the series per se, but I'm new to reading it. I've heard a lot of people say that reading the manga is a completely different experience than watching the anime, and so as a fan of the anime, I'm very excited to delve into the manga to see what's different. Is there any changes? Was there anything left out? Is the manga gonna hit me a little harder in some moments where the anime hit me as well? Like, what is going to change? If you are new to the One Piece series and haven't read this before, obviously spoilers ahead. Today we're gonna be reviewing and talking about this, so if you're interested in reading this and want a little bit of an opinion on it before you purchase it for yourself and read it yourself, then this video is for you. But as well, if you are also a One Piece fan and you just want to hear someone else talk about it and talk about their opinions about it, this video is also for you. But before we go ahead and dive on into talking about One Piece, which is something that I'm very excited to do, trust me, I talk about One Piece a little too much, make sure you go down below, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content of mine. Here on the channel, we're going to be doing a lot of nerdy stuff. I'm a massive geek myself, and so we are going to be doing a bunch of manga, gaming, anime, lots and lots of nerdy stuff here on the channel. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, if that sounds like something you would like to see, there's definitely going to be more of it here. So as a great man once said, come aboard and bring along all your hopes and dreams, and I'm saying as little as I can before I get copyrighted. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into the wonderful world of One Piece. As we open up our story, we start with Gold Roger's execution. Now, Gold Roger is the former king of the pirates, and he's being executed as a villain of the entire world, and at his execution, he says that he left all of his treasure and everything he found and culminated throughout his adventures all in one place, and challenges the entire world to go and find it. And this challenge from Gold Roger starts the Great Age of Piracy, or the Great Pirate Era. We then set our sights on Monkey D. Luffy, who is our protagonist of the story, and he is a little kid in a village off in the far reaches of the East Blue, and he's currently being watched over and kind of fathered in a way by the red-haired pirate Shanks. Now, right away you can see what kind of a character Luffy is, in that he is extremely fun and outgoing and committed to his goals, and he even at one point stabs himself in the eye because he is so committed to being a pirate and wants to prove himself to Shanks that he can be on his crew. One of the things I wanted to point out and talk about was something that becomes really important later on, and so I love that they introduce it to us so early, and also introducing it to Luffy at a very young age, is that one of the best things about being a pirate is the idea of a pirate's freedom. That pirates essentially can go out and they can live the life that they want to live, they can go for whatever they want to go for to achieve their dreams, and they are the freest people in the world to do so. That idea becomes very important later on in the story, so definitely keep that in mind, and I love that they introduced it this early. One of the first things that happens is we are in a bar back in Luffy's village, and we see a mountain bandit walk into the bar where Shanks and his pirates, they're all hanging out, they're all getting food, they're all getting drunk, you know, typical pirate things. And this guy just walks in and he wants all the booze for himself, tries to pick a fight with Shanks, and Shanks is not having it. Shanks will not fight back, he will not punch him, he will not hit him, he's barely even verbally fighting him. Luffy sees all this happening and calls Shanks a coward, saying that you should be able to fight for yourself, why didn't you fight back, why didn't you do anything, why didn't you say anything, and Luffy's very disappointed in Shanks. And this is where we get to see just what kind of a person Shanks is. He tells Luffy after all this that killing does not make a man, and we immediately see that Shanks is not the type of person that's just gonna fight for the sake of fighting. A very respectable man he is, Mr. Red-Haired Shanks. Luffy starts to walk away, and someone pulls on his arm, and at this moment is when we start to realize that Luffy is not like regular kids. Luffy has eaten a devil fruit, and in the world of One Piece, the devil fruits are these kind of mystical fruits that are all scattered around the One Piece world, and all of them have different powers that you can possess if you eat one. Luffy has eaten the Gum Gum devil fruit, which means that his body has turned into rubber and he can stretch all of his limbs. But as the name implies, eating a devil fruit does come with consequences, and because Luffy has eaten a devil fruit, and same with any other devil fruit eaters, means that you can no longer swim as you've become a natural enemy of the sea. The sea in One Piece is considered this, like, great almighty being because the sea is so vast and takes up most of the One Piece world. Y'all, I just had to wait for a plane and a motorcycle to stop making noise so that way I could continue talking. Don't you know I'm trying to talk about One Piece here? Typical day living in New York City, what can I say? So, flash forward, Luffy ends up getting kidnapped by this same mountain bandit that attacks Shanks in the bar because this mountain bandit don't know how to mind his own business, and he kidnaps Luffy, and Shanks' crew tries to save him and fight back, but of course the mountain bandit, being real sneaky, sneaks off with Luffy and takes him to a boat and tries to sail away from the island with him. All of a sudden, this massive sea monster comes out, attacks the ship, knocks the bandit off, and Luffy is now in the water, and because he's eaten a devil fruit, he can't swim. So Shanks comes over and saves him. But of course, this does come with a price. The sea monster attacked Shanks and bit off his arm in saving Luffy. Luffy, of course, is very upset by this, saying, "You lost your arm for my sake. You lost your arm saving me." And another moment of great Shanks character is him saying that your life was more important to me than an arm. It is just an arm. We're already seeing how important of a figure Shanks is to Luffy, and that Shanks is such a great fatherly figure and is taking such good care of Luffy. And it is no surprise at this point that Luffy wants to grow up to be just like him and be a pirate just like him as well. We see the passing of the iconic straw hat that you see on Luffy in all of the social media for the rest of the series. You see Luffy wearing his straw hat. He gets it from Shanks, and Shanks gives him the straw hat, saying that you can give this back to me once you become a great pirate. So we already see how important that straw hat is to Luffy, given that it was given to him by Shanks. We do a little bit of a time skip, and Luffy is now old enough to set out on his own adventure, and he is going to captain his own pirate crew, but he doesn't have a crew, he hardly even has a ship, and he is setting out on his own on this small little dinghy of a ship, and the same sea monster that attacked him all those years ago that apparently just hangs out outside the village and we're all cool with it. But hey, I guess that's just the world of One Piece. This time Luffy can actually defend himself. He uses his Gum Gum pistol, punches him right in the face, and we move along with our journey. The next thing that happens is we run into the lady pirate Alvida, and she has a little cabin boy named Kobe who wants to grow up and one day be a marine. Luffy, after barely surviving an encounter with a whirlpool, emerges from a barrel that he used to protect himself, and of course he immediately starts getting along with Kobe, and Kobe starts telling him about his dream and wants to be a marine, but he's just too afraid to pursue it. He's afraid to go up against Lady Alvida, and Luffy has some choice words for him in that regard, saying that he thinks he's a coward, he hates people like him, and that is wild that we have a main character saying this to someone within the first couple chapters. But it just shows that we immediately see what kind of person that Luffy is, in that he is so determined to achieve his dream, and he believes that anybody else who is also that determined to achieve their dreams will act exactly the same way that he does. So I think in this moment he's just looking for, out of Kobe, to see a little bit more confidence, a little more assuredness in himself, and that he wants to go achieve his dream, and that he wants it as badly as Luffy does. I think that's why he reacts the way he does. Luffy, of course, makes very quick work of Alvida and steals Kobe away, and we have our sights now set on Zoro. Or Zolo, I guess. In some translated versions, we have Zolo instead of Zoro, but I will be referring to him as Zoro because that's his name. Definitely let me know if you read this for the first time and you just thought his name was Zolo and you just have always called him Zolo. I definitely would love to know. Luffy and Kobe overhear someone talking about pirate hunter Zoro, and so Luffy of course sets his sights on trying to find him and asking him to be the first member of his crew. We make our way to the island where Zoro is being kept and imprisoned by Axehand Morgan, which is the commander of the Marines on the island that we're on. We learn that Axehand Morgan is not at all a good person, and everyone on the island is kind of living in a constant fear of him. So we get an early establishment of you can have a good pirate as much as you can have a bad marine. Morgan's son, who is a little bit of a doofus named Helmeppo, which, I mean, with a name like that, how could you not be, locks up Zoro and imprisons him in this yard and says that if you can stay here for the entire month, then we'll just let you go. Luffy and Kobe find him in this yard and are trying to figure out a way to get him out when they see that a little girl has snuck into the yard to try to give Zoro some rice balls. Because obviously when you are stranded somewhere for a month, you're gonna get a little hungry. Zoro at first tries to turn her away, saying, "What are you doing? doing here? Why are you trying to help me? Like, I'm not hungry, go away. But the little girl insists that she knows that he's hungry. She tries to help him, but then of course Helmeppo comes in and ruins everything. He tries the rice ball. It's too sweet because she used sugar instead of salt for the rice balls because she thought they would taste better. Helmeppo stomps it on the ground, calling it disgusting, and then says for one of his marines to toss the little girl out. After Helmeppo and the marines leave, Luffy heads on in and starts speaking to Zoro, asking for him to join his crew and saying that he needs a strong person like him. Zoro immediately turns him down, saying that he has absolutely zero interest in being a part of a pirate crew. But what is interesting about this moment here is what he does with the rice balls on the ground. Zoro asks Luffy to pick up the rice balls on the ground, which Luffy points out are mostly more dirt and mud than they are food at this point, but Zoro doesn't care. He asks him to pick it up and give it to him. Zoro eats these, at this point, mostly mud balls in the shape of rice balls, and says to let the little girl know that they were delicious. This is the moment where Luffy decides Zoro must be on my crew, because this is not only someone who I've heard all these crazy things about him being crazy strong, but he's also a good, kind-hearted person. Luffy and Kobe now create this giant scheme to try to get Zoro out of confinement, and Luffy goes to try to find Zoro's 3 swords, which are inside of the marine base after Helmeppo took them, and Kobe is trying to get Zoro out of the yard and trying to untangle him from the ropes. While trying to get Zoro's swords back, Luffy launches himself to the top of the marine base and accidentally knocks over this giant, humongous stone statue of Morgan that he was trying to set up, and of course Morgan gets very, very upset and angry when Luffy does this and breaks it and says that he's gonna have his head, essentially. Luffy doesn't really care, which is kind of a running gag in the series that he is in constant danger from everyone around him and he just is completely unfazed. Eventually we find the swords, and as Luffy is bringing them back to Zoro, Kobe is trying to untie him, but the Marines have already gotten down there and they are about to shoot at Zoro and Kobe, and that's when we get some of Zoro's backstory in a moment where he thinks this might be the end of his life if he can't guard himself. Get a little bit of Zoro's backstory here, talking about one of his childhood friends, Kuina, who was another person who was training at his sword dojo, who wanted to be the greatest swordsman in the world, which, at the end of the day, is Zoro's dream. Zoro and Kuina constantly battled it out, wanting to be the greatest swordsman in the world, and Kuina won most of the battles, if not all of the battles, that she ever faced with Zoro, meaning that Zoro thought of Kuina as his greatest rival. We get a very sad scene talking about Kuina, where she tells us about how everyone around her, and even her own father, essentially told her that a woman will never be the world's greatest swordsman. This, of course, ticks off Zoro, who has consistently lost to Kuina, has never been able to beat her, and says that I view you as my greatest rival in becoming the world's greatest swordsman. I have not been able to beat you, so you thinking this way about yourself is an insult to me, but also an insult to yourself. You definitely see in this scene how much respect and appreciation Zoro may have for Kuina, even though he is constantly trying to beat her and constantly trying to be better than her and be the world's greatest swordsman, but he does have an appreciation for her talent and her skill at the end of the day. And then you turn the page and you immediately get one of the saddest things that happens in this first volume, and that is Kuina ends up passing away after falling down the stairs. When I saw this for the first time, I immediately was like, oh, of course, we have this tragic backstory, someone had to pass away, of course, it very much gave Disney vibes. I was like, oh, okay, we just lose Kuina so early. I think they did a really good job of giving us the backdrop for Zoro immediately and seeing why he has the dream that he has right away, and you, at this point, are intrigued by him and already wanting to know more about him. Luffy and Zoro end up defeating Axe Hand Morgan, and in sort of like a victory feast, because Zoro at this point is starving, we head back to where the little girl lives, which is actually kind of like this bar restaurant, and they give them a bunch of food, they celebrate, they have drinks, they talk about Zoro joining the crew, and Zoro agrees to stick with Luffy. We officially have our first member of the crew in Pirate Hunter Zoro, and I love Zoro so much. I think that he is great, and he only gets greater. This, of course, kind of leaves Kobe in this awkward situation of Luffy is now gathering allies and friends to join a pirate crew, and will only keep gathering more people as he goes on his adventure, and Kobe wants to be a Marine. That's Kobe's dream, and he currently doesn't really have a place with Luffy. It's at this point where the Marines come on into the bar and they say, look, thank you for all that you've done for us. We were afraid of Morgan for so long, but unfortunately, because y'all are still pirates, we can't just let y'all hang around in the town and do whatever you want. We're gonna have to ask you to leave. The townsfolk are furious. They're like, they saved the town, they did all this, and you're gonna kick them out anyway. Y'all hated Morgan too. What are we doing here, essentially? Luffy and Zoro, they said, you know what, that's fine. This is just a part of being a pirate. They completely understand, you know, not being wanted in a marine-centered town, and so they say, you know what, it's our time to pack up and go. Luffy and Zoro head out, but as they're leaving, the Marines ask if Koby is with them. Koby, of course, has no idea what to say, because if the Marines at this point find out about Koby being a cabin boy for Lady Alvida, then they are never gonna let him join the Marines, finding out that he worked with pirates. And this here is a moment that I think is so great, because a lot of people will write Luffy off as very goofy and dumb and aloof, but Luffy is actually very intuitive in certain situations. Luffy does have his smarts about him when it comes to certain things, and this is definitely one of them. Luffy essentially walks up to Koby and just starts going down the list of, you worked for Lady Alvida, you were her cabin boy, like you were a pirate for a while. Koby, of course, not wanting the Marines to hear any of this and ruining his chances to become a Marine, Koby socks Luffy across the face, and they just start duking it out and brawling. Zoro pulls Luffy off, and the Marines say, alright, that's enough. Clearly you two are not a part of the same crew, as you don't even get along. Turns out this was Luffy's plan all along. He just wanted to hear Koby stand up for himself and stand up for his dream and say that this is something that he wanted all on his own, as well as proving that they clearly are not a part of the same pirate crew if they're fighting like this. Koby realizes this and realizes that he's still being protected by Luffy. He's still being guarded by him and protecting his dream for him instead of Koby standing up for himself. And Koby is a little bit hurt by this, a little bit saddened, and knows that he has to toughen up. He knows that he has to become stronger to protect his own dream. Koby and, surprisingly, the other Marines head to the harbor, and they give a good old salute and a goodbye to Luffy and Zoro as they sail away onto their next adventure, and we say goodbye to Koby. Our next adventure begins with a little bit of a setup for Volume 2, and that's going to be the mention of the Buggy Pirates and meeting Nami, the cat burglar. Nami is a thief who steals from pirates, and we are introduced to her currently trying to steal a map of the Grand Line, which is where Luffy is trying to go at this point, because that's where we need to go to eventually find the One Piece. So finding a map of that would be very, very helpful to not only Luffy, but to any other pirate or person who wants to achieve treasures and greatness. As for Nami, we see that she very much wants this map to go and find some treasure. Enter Volume 2. In Volume 2, we start off with Luffy meeting Nami and learning a little bit about Nami's goals and how Nami feels about pirates. We learn that Nami hates pirates, would never want to be a part of a pirate crew, and absolutely despises them, and that's why she steals treasure specifically from pirates. We end up in a town that has been completely taken over by the Buggy Pirates, which is led by Captain Buggy himself, and we are shown that Buggy may have a little bit of a devil fruit ability himself, but we get more into that later, which would make Buggy the second devil fruit user that we have seen so far in the manga. Nami and Luffy agree to work together, and they head to where Buggy is based in order to get this map of the Grand Line. It turns out that Nami is a bit of a trickster, very, very clever, and she actually tricks Luffy. She bundles him up, ties him up in some rope, and hands him off to Buggy as kind of like a prize of like goodwill, and tries to weasel her way into the Buggy Pirates so that way she can steal all of his treasure as well as the map of the Grand Line without having to get her own hands dirty. She just tosses Luffy in as a sacrificial lamb, and then she can just make her way out. We're really seeing in the beginning here that Nami has her sense of morals in that all pirates are exactly the same. She thinks that all pirates are terrible people, all pirates are just in for the awful aspects of the world, such as killing to get what you want, and stealing from others, and just being terrible people. Buggy ends up going to Nami and says that Nami actually needs to shoot Luffy in order to prove herself to the Buggy Pirates, and that she is actually one of them, and Nami, of course, is not about this. Luffy kind of eggs her on, saying that, oh, this is just part of being a pirate, and that's for standing for what you believe in, and doing whatever needs to be done, even if it means dying for it, if it means that it's your dream and what you hope to achieve, which is a very Luffy moral. Nami completely disagrees with this, saying that killing is never something that she wants to stoop down to, saying that it is at the level of low-down pirates to kill people for what you want. We later come to understand that Nami has this moral because she says to Luffy that pirates took someone very dear to her. What happens happens next is Zoro, out of nowhere, rushes in to come in and save Luffy. Zoro begins to fight with Pirate Captain Buggy, and we start to see what exactly Buggy's devil fruit is. Buggy ate what is called the Chop Chop fruit, not only meaning that he is immune to being slashed by swords and slashed by any other kind of weapon, but he can take off and separate any piece of his body and kind of like fly them around to do his own thing, such as like detaching your hand and having it go grab something and bring it right back to you. Buggy's fruit is definitely a wild one, definitely very interesting to see a fight take place with the Chop Chop fruit, but unfortunately Zoro is not someone who is made to fight someone like Buggy, as Zoro, a swordsman, can't really slash up someone like Buggy. Buggy, using both his tricks and his devil fruit, ends up wounding Zoro, giving him a big old slash on his side. Zoro then decides at this point the most important thing to do is just get Luffy and get out of there. So even though he has this big wound on his side, he picks up the giant heavy cage that Luffy is currently inside of and just gets running with Nami following behind them. It's also at this point that we get to see Nami see Zoro's resolve a little bit and see how important Luffy is to Zoro and how much that Zoro, even though he is wounded, will go out of his way to help someone that he cares about and thinks of as his friend, which kind of goes against what Nami thinks a pirate is. After we run away and are a little bit of a ways away from the Buggy Pirates and their camp, we meet up with Mayor Boodle, who is the mayor of the town. He looks very silly. He has like this giant pompadour of poodle hair on him. And we also meet one of the cutest characters in all of One Piece, which is the dog Shushu. As Zoro is getting some much needed medical attention, and by medical attention I mean he chose to take a nap instead of healing his wounds or being seen by a doctor, because that is what Zoro. Luffy and Nami hear the story about Shushu, and that Shushu actually has a dream of his own. He is guarding the pet shop that him and his previous owner used to be in charge of, but it turns out that his previous owner left one day and actually passed away and never came back in a very unfortunate circumstance, and Shushu still guards the shop for his owner. It is so sad and tragic, and seeing Shushu just guarding this shop, and it is, oh my god, it's so sad. I really wish that Shushu joined the crew. I really do. I love Shushu so much, and I really hope that one day we will eventually make our way back and see Shushu again. It is at this point where one of the Buggy Pirates, Moji the Lion Tamer, which is completely fitting with Buggy's whole circus clown kind of crew vibe going on, Moji goes and attacks Shushu's pet shop for his lion to get some food for him, and destroys the entire shop, destroys Shushu's dream, and Luffy sees this and cannot stand for it. He intervenes. We are seeing time and time again that Luffy is not only standing for his dream, but he stands for everyone's dreams around him. Luffy is very much someone who is intuitive in looking into what your dream is and what your happiness is, what your goals are, and wants to protect it almost as much as he wants to protect his dream. Luffy is just such a ball of joy and sunshine, and I just love his character so much, and he really is such a fantastic protagonist. The fight between Luffy and Moji happens, destroying the entire pet shop, and Nami, of course, seeing this, only sees the destruction aspect of it. She sees two pirates fighting and then destroying a dog's dream. In the same way that we consistently see Luffy fighting and protecting his own dream as well as other people's, we constantly are getting examples of Nami kind of making the worst examples. In any kind of interaction that we've had so far with pirates, we see Nami kind of just assume the worst. Nami kind of just assume that pirates are all bad, pirates are always going to do the worst, and pirates will never do anything for the good sake of others. What stops her from feeling this way is when she sees Luffy come out with a box of dog food, the only thing that Luffy was able to salvage from the pet shop, and he sets it down next to Shushu and confides in Shushu and says sorry for not being able to protect the shop. Nami is shocked by this. She is absolutely floored that Luffy did something out of the kindness of his heart for someone else. And Nami has been consistently proven over and over again that Luffy and Zoro are not like other pirates that she may have met. It's really Luffy's kindness that shines here, and I just love him so much. Mayor Boodle at this point is furious, and he's saying that he's gonna go fight Buggy and get the town back himself, which everybody knows is a bad idea. I mean, Mayor Boodle, you're not doing much, especially with that wig. Luffy, Nami and a surprisingly awake and alive Zoro head back to Buggy's camp, and they decide that they are going to fight him and save the town, and also save the mayor in the process. Zoro has an amazing fight with Kabaji, another swordsman, on Buggy's crew, and it's a really, really great fight. Zoro ends up injuring himself even more just to prove a point that he can still beat Kabaji even though he's injured, and I love Zoro so much. He's so cool. Luffy and Buggy end up fighting, and this fight is wild. I mean, there is tickling of feet to distract Buggy. There's taking Buggy's body parts and just like tying them up and then shooting Buggy off into the sky. Whoa, blasting off again. Pokemon moment, what with Buggy? Like, it's absolutely wild. But before all of that happens, we end off this volume with hearing about that Buggy was actually on the same pirate crew as Shanks. Crazy that we are already getting this connection right off the bat. But we will learn more about this connection between Buggy and Shanks in Volume 3. Enter Volume 3. Before we get any more backstory, we have the fight continue between Luffy and Buggy using one of his knives actually ends up nicking Luffy's straw hat that he got from Shanks, and it has holes in the top, and he gets very, very upset by this as the straw hat is one of Luffy's treasures. We get yet another moment where Nami sees this and doesn't understand why something like a hat would be so important to a pirate. Because in her mind and her opinion of pirates, she thinks that pirates are only about their actual solid gold, treasures, and taking people's lives, and going out and burning villages. This is what she thinks of pirates, and seeing a pirate be so distraught and upset about a hat that is something that is considered a treasure to them is something very new and foreign to her. Now is when we start hearing about the connection between Shanks and Buggy. We learn that Shanks and Buggy were on the same pirate crew. We don't get the name of that pirate crew yet and what ship they were on, but we do know that they were on the same ship. They were kind of like at the same age. They were childhood friends, but at the same time they were rivals. Just a very interesting, like, brotherly kind of rivalry relationship going on. We also get this wild panel of Buggy saying that he has an appreciation for booty, and I just felt like I needed to point that out. It doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, I just really wanted to show this to y'all. We very quickly learn the differences between Buggy and Shanks in that Buggy wants to be the pirate that Nami kind of visualizes when she sees a pirate. She sees someone who is all about treasure and all about going out and taking over villages and just being the greatest in the world, which is very much the kind of pirate that Buggy wants to be. Shanks disagrees. He's never about the stealing things, the looting, the killing people. Shanks is not about that, and we know that that is a moral that has carried Shanks throughout his life, and he is still very much like that today because of the scenes we have seen with him and Luffy. So obviously him and Buggy are gonna completely butt heads. In a flashback scene where we see Shanks and Buggy's crew raiding another pirate ship, we see Buggy finds a treasure map and is very excited about this and sees that the treasure is going to be at the bottom of the ocean in this location that's marked on the map. It's also at this point where we find that they have found a devil fruit in one of their raids. This devil fruit, of course, being Buggy's future Chop Chop fruit. Shanks and Buggy have a conversation about the devil fruits, and Buggy himself says that anybody would be stupid to eat a devil fruit because losing your ability to swim is absolutely insane for a pirate, which, yes, is a crazy thought that you completely lose your ability to swim, and mostly pirates are the people who have these devil fruits. Shanks then mentions to Buggy, which piques his interest, that you could probably end up selling this devil fruit for a very high cost of money because they are devil fruits. They're widely wanted, they're widely spread around the world, and everybody wants one. Buggy's mind goes cha-ching, and all of a sudden all he sees is dollar signs, and he wants to take this devil fruit and sell it for himself. So what he does is he actually has a fake devil fruit that he gets. He pretends to eat it so that way everybody thinks that he has already eaten it, it's gone, it's out of the way, but instead he kept the real devil fruit and he intended to sell it as well as getting his treasure that he found on the treasure map. While sitting by himself and chatting to himself about what his plan is and what he's going to do with the treasure and this devil fruit, Shanks comes up and scares him, and because he doesn't want Shanks to know his plan, Buggy takes the devil fruit, puts it in his mouth, and accidentally swallows it. This idiot, this complete and utter goofball, swallows the devil fruit, and now he has his Chop Chop powers. He also loses his ability to swim, but not like it matters anyway, because Shanks scaring him not only made him swallow the devil fruit, but he also lost his treasure map and threw it overboard and it landed in the water, and Buggy tries to go in after it, and of course because he can't swim, he loses it. So Shanks of course dives in and saves his life because Shanks is what a good person, and Luffy hears this and is just just like, oh, so Shanks saved your life. And Buggy goes, no, that's what you got out of that story? I was saying how awful of a person Shanks was. He scared me. He made me eat this devil fruit that I didn't want to eat, so it was a complete accident. I lost my treasure map. Buggy just going down the list of all the problems he has with Shanks. It's at this point we wrap up the fight with Buggy. Nami tries to steal some treasure. Buggy goes after her, and then Nami slaps him with the treasure bag, but right as that's happening, Luffy comes on in and distracts him by tickling his foot, and then we got a huge scene where Nami ties up the body parts that were flying around from Buggy, separated from his body, and Luffy just smacks him across the sky. Smacks Buggy, does a, we're blasting off again, and Buggy the Clown is gone. He saved the town. It is at this point that the villagers see that Luffy, in order to protect Mayor Boodle, unfortunately knocked him out before the fight started because he didn't want him getting in the way and getting himself hurt. And the villagers see this, thinking that Luffy did it out of malice or some sort of bad intention, try to run them out of the village. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro are all running away at this point, trying to get out of town, and Shushu jumps in and tries to guard and protect them as they make their way out. And I'm like, Shushu, just come with us. Why couldn't Shushu come with us? I wanted Shushu to join so badly when I saw this for the first time, but I guess, you know, we're trying to get Nami at this point. So I guess we're gonna get Nami, but we could have had Shushu. I am just kidding. I love Nami a lot, and we will talk about her more in the later entries. The mayor wakes up, comes to the harbor, and gives a thank you for saving the town to Luffy, Nami, and Zoro as they sail away. And as it turns out, Nami gets upset with Luffy in this moment, realizing that Luffy left half of the treasure that they got from Buggy with the villagers and with Mayor Boodle, so that way they could rebuild their town. Nami, of course, being very upset because she's all about money, she's all about treasure, she's trying to get the money, and she's very upset by this, but Luffy's like, hey, they need to rebuild their town, so I left this for them, once again seeing how good of a person Luffy is. But it's also at this moment where we see how good of a person Nami can be. She remembers what Luffy said about his straw hat being his treasure, sees that it is still nicked and has the holes in it, and so she offers to fix it for Luffy. What happens next in our story after we sail away from Orangetown is actually a bit of a filler episode that happens in the anime, so it was kind of fun reading it in the manga. I didn't know they were going to feature it here. We come across this giant foresty island with a bunch of animals, and we eventually run into a pirate named Gaimon, who has trapped himself inside of a treasure chest, and it looks so freaking silly. Gaimon helps us understand the One Piece world building just a little bit more by explaining to us some of the aspects of the world, talking about the Grand Line, how it goes around the world horizontally, and how there is the Red Line, which goes around the world vertically, which is like this giant mountainous red rock kind of thing going around the world. Luffy, of course, asks Gaimon to join his crew like he has with almost every single person who we have passed on our adventure so far, but Gaimon has dreams of his own and actually enjoys living on this island, so we leave Gaimon and we move on to our next adventure. This is the setup for the next couple volumes. We are now entering the Syrup Village arc, where we are going to get our next crew member in Usopp the Liar. We enter Syrup Village and we immediately see Usopp, our new character here, and he is running through the town screaming at the top of his lungs that pirates are attacking, pirates are raiding the village, pirates are coming, and guess what? They sure ain't. Usopp is the boy who cried wolf, essentially. Usopp loves just going through, pranking everybody, telling everybody that pirates are coming, which I guess in theory is terrifying, a very awful thing to do. Why would you ever do that? But he just frequently runs so much throughout the village that everybody upon hearing this is like, ugh, not this kid again. And no one believes him, of course, because he's just lied so many times about it. And that's our introduction to who Usopp is. We also see that Usopp has his own little brigade of kid pirates that he calls the Usopp Pirates. He has 3 little boys that work for him on his pirate crew, and it's just really, really silly. Luffy and crew land on the island and meet up with Usopp, and they actually ask him if there's somewhere on this island where they would be able to get an actual decent-sized pirate ship, because at this point we're tired of sailing on, you know, driftwood. We would love to get an actual boat. And so they're wondering if there's somewhere in the village that we'd be able to get one. Zoro inquires about a giant mansion that they saw on the hill and was asking who lives there, because obviously if someone is rich, maybe they could buy us a little bit of a boat. Usopp kind of just shirks it off and then runs away, and it turns out that he is running to that mansion to meet up with a friend of his who lives there, Kaya. Turns out that Kaya is the rich heir to the family who owns the mansion, and she is being taken care of by her butler Klahadore because she's actually very, very ill. We then get this relationship of Usopp sneaking up a tree up to next to Kaya's window, and he tells her these fake, definitely lies, stories of his pirate adventures, but they make Kaya happy, they make Kaya laugh, and it's definitely something that is just a very sweet moment of seeing how Usopp likes to make Kaya a little bit happier, obviously knowing that she is sick, she's not doing well, she's not happy, she's lonely in the house by herself other than Klahadore, and so Usopp tells her these stories to try to make her feel better, and it's just a very, very sweet moment of him using his lies for something that is happy and positive. Luffy's crew also makes their way to the mansion and sees Usopp doing this, and by this point Klahadore the butler comes out, very upset, very unhappy that Usopp and the crew are here, and so he yells at them to get out, at this point even starting to talk about Usopp's father and how Usopp's father is actually a pirate. Klahadore starts saying all these awful things about Usopp, about his father, about being a pirate, about being of dirty pirate heritage, like all these awful, awful things Klahadore is saying. And Usopp eventually punches him across the face, and we leave, and Kaya is just completely upset by all of this. It's at this point that we learn of Kaya and Klahadore's relationship, and that Klahadore was actually taken in by Kaya's late parents, and he was someone who was taking care of her for pretty much a couple years ever since he was taken in. He's been the one to take care of Kaya, and just has such a strong love and care for her that he's really, really worried about people coming in and interacting with her, and just kind of making things worse for her. At the same time, we go back to Luffy and Usopp, and we see them having a conversation on the cliff about Usopp's father. We come to find out that there is yet another connection here, in that Usopp's father, Yasopp, is actually the sniper for the red-haired pirates and knows Shanks. We get this really cute scene of Yasopp, Usopp's father, just talking little Luffy's ear off about Usopp, saying, "Hey, I've got a son your age, and I would love for you to meet him, and he's so great, I love my son, but like, the pirate flag was calling me," and you know, like, just really, really, like, father talking about his son, like, it's really, really adorable and cute, but at the same time, you did completely abandon him to be a pirate, so it's like, I don't really know how to feel about this. But Usopp actually does have a great appreciation for his father, because one day he hopes to be a brave warrior of the sea and be a pirate himself, and so he really actually admires what his dad did. It's at this point where we're cut off from the conversation with Luffy and Usopp, and we see that Klahadore and this weird-looking hypnotist guy, Django, are down on the beach, and they're talking about a murder plot. We learn here that Klahadore is actually secretly a pirate named Captain Kuro of the Black Cat Pirates, and his goal here was to infiltrate Kaya's family home and steal her inheritance. So he didn't have her best interests in mind, and his backstory was all a lie. Usopp and Luffy are very upset hearing this, but Luffy ends up getting hypnotized by the hypnotist Django and passes out on the beach, and Kuro actually lets Usopp run away and doesn't really care if he tells the story of what he heard, because Usopp is going to be considered a liar, and no one in the village will believe him anyway. But that is a story to be saved for the next volume. That is the end of One Piece East Blue Volumes 1 through 3. Thank y'all so much on joining me for my little adventure talking about One Piece today. Wow, I've been sitting here for hours just talking about One Piece, and I have never been happier. I really had a lot of fun reading One Piece, and obviously I knew I would like it because I loved watching it, and so of course I would love reading it, but I think reading it definitely did feel very different. I loved getting the same sense of adventure, but just in a book. I think that it was really, really amazing. I enjoyed seeing the art, I loved the panels, I felt a lot of the same emotions that I felt watching it, and so I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. Let me know down in the comment section below if you enjoyed this, if you would like to see more reviews, or if you'd like to see a series of me moving forward with One Piece, because you know I would love to talk about it more and more, so if you'd love to hear me talk about One Piece, let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you go down below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel to see more content of mine. I do a bunch of gaming, anime, manga stuff. I'm a huge nerd, no shocker there. I'm here talking about One Piece for hours. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see y'all in the next video.